Hello, everyone. I'm Imran. Today, we'll be looking at what's new in HyperWorks 2025.1 for browsers. So, yeah, let's dive into it. We have introduced create entity tool. Basically, it's a centralized a tool for creation of any entity or a keyword based on the solver interface that user is working on. So it basically is kind of a one-stop solution or one-stop tool for any entity or keyword creation. It kind of also addresses and simplifies the context menus, the long and non-scrollable context menus that we had in the tool, both in legacy and the new interface. So this was kind of a pain point wherein you had to click on the scroll buttons to move through the list and then pick the keyword that you wanted to create. So it majorly addresses that and simplifies the entity creation, enhancing the user experience to next level. So first of all, on the entry point, to invoke the dialog, we have three entry points. Basically, you can regularly how earlier you used to create the entities. You can right click and enter from the context menu, or click on the plus button in the browsers, or we can use the shortcut Shift C to invoke the create dialog. Once the dialog is up, you will see that the entities are listed on the left side, and on the right side, it gives a complete list of the keywords that are supported in the current interface. On the left side, we just don't list the entities that were there before. A lot of new entities are also added. For example, all the optimization entities, you don't have to go to the optimization browser to create them. Entities like systems vectors, which were not allowed to be created from the context menu before, those are all added. So basically, the goal going forward is to be able to list any entity that you can create in the product to be available in this particular list, and uh, user can create from this particular dialog. Okay. By default, you see that nothing is selected, no entity is selected on the left side. So entire list of keywords that are supported in the given interface are listed here. But once you click, the list of the keywords is filtered to show relevant to the selected entity on the left. And here, the top 10 are basically, we have defined the most frequently used keywords based on the experience as the top 10. And then the rest of the list follows in alphabetical order. Currently, this list is a kind of a static list, so user doesn't have the capability to change this and define their own favorites, but that's something that we have planned for the next phase. Okay, so as and when you pick any entity here, first of all, you can see that the list is scrollable. You can pick the entity, and based on the entity that's selected, the list is going to be filtered. And at any point, if you wanted to see the entire list of the keywords, you can just right click and say show all. That's one way. Second, you can even clear the selection from the context menu on the left side, or you can just hit escape. Okay. And just quick note here, yes, the right side is going to give you the list of entities, I mean, list of keywords for solver entities. Then if you're picking any non-solver entity, like features or field, all those entities that doesn't have any keywords, you will not see anything on the right side. Okay, so on creation, once you enter into the dialog, you can either pick the required entity, and the keyword is automatically selected. The default that we used to get upon creation from the empty space in the module browser, that is maintained, and that's set as the first keyword and the default keyword. So that automatically gets selected. You can click on create. So that's one way. And you can define all the attributes that you would want to define, and obviously close this. Then I'm going to use Shift C again, the shortcut. The second way of creation would be you can just double click the required entity of the keyword that you want to create. So you don't have to move the mouse all the way to the create button. You can just double click the required entity of the keyword, and it'll get created. Then another way would be just again selecting the required entity or keyword and just hitting enter. So that's another way of creating the required entity or keyword. Okay, in this particular list, like I said, we are listing all the entities. So some entities are like direct creation. For example, materials or properties, we directly create those entities. So those will get created directly. There are some entities that kind of go to a controller, for example, be it like entities like tags, wherein you would have to provide some information before creating that particular entity. And similarly, another example would be a feature entity, where and you would have to first of all define the entities for which you're trying to find the feature. Um, then yeah, once the tool is up, creation of any entity would remain same. This is just the entry point change. And another way or another method of creation would be going to the context. Certain entities here, they use the ribbon context tools for creation. So we push the user uh, to the context tool, and again same thing. Once you enter there, your creation is going to remain the way you would create the systems or any entity from either the controller or a context tool. That would remain same. Similarly, any other tools that invoke, any other entity that invoke a tool to create the entities, for example, section cards or any entity that requires the flow to go via a tool, we basically point to that particular thing. Okay, then the other way of creation would be through the search bar. So the idea here is to kind of address both the user base, someone who doesn't really care about the solver side of it and just want to create some materials and properties or any entities and just have it as an assignment. So you can continue creating your entities from entity type point of view, like how you do from the context menu in the previous release, um, from this particular list. But as a user, if you kind of knew the keyword that you would want to create, you can just enter into it. I'll come to that dialog later. You can just enter into it, and we have the focus on the search bar. You can just start typing the keyword that you want to create. Okay, so it should be very quick compared to the long context menus that we had to navigate through to create any entities. Um, you can pick any type of keyword that you would want to create in the product, and just you can type in here and create it. Okay, on the search, first type is obviously the direct text search. You can type in the required keyword, and we would dynamically apply that, and the filter and the list on the right side gets filtered based on that, and it's automatically highlighted. You can just hit enter to create it. So that's one way. And the second way would be searching the keywords based on the entity type. So you would have to input a hyphen, and then if you are going via the entity type, you can just type in the entity type, and all the keywords that are attached to that particular entity will be listed there. Then another way would be searching via categories. So we have supported that with tilde option. So for example, if you wanted to create any optimization related category, keywords, you can just type in as optimization, or just half of the word. You will get the entire list of keywords that are related to optimization. And similarly, any loads, for example, if I type pressure or temperature, so all those categories are also defined. You can search by that. Uh, so either via the direct text input or the the entity type or a given category. So all that search is possible. One note here is we have kind of given the priority to a keyword search here because obviously that's going to be a big list in any interface compared to the number of entities that you would have. So the search is always going to work on the keywords. But here, though the search is not there, you can actually use the keyboard to jump to the entity that you'd want to. So you can just after selecting one, you can just hit the required key, and then it'll jump to the entity that you'd want to create. Okay, so now the dialog that you see here with the split view, this is always going to come up when we initiate it, like I showed from the empty context menu or from the plus button. But on the folder level, if you are invoking from the a folder level in the model browser or any browser, we paste a single view list. So here the idea is like the entity type is already known, so you'll not see the entities again. So just the keywords related to that particular entity are listed here so that you can quickly select the one that you want, double click and create it. And if you are, so that you're going to get when you're going to invoke it from the main folder. And this behavior of directly creating when we know the entity type and we know the keyword that you want to create is maintained like in the previous version. And this is same within the entity view also. So if you're creating from a given entity view, we already know the type. So you're going to get a single view dialog. And if you're in a sub view where along with the entity type, even the keyword type is known, we're going to directly create it. So again, within this entity, within this list of keyword, we have provided the option. If you entered it from a folder and for some reason you wanted to create something else, you can actually click on this drop down, pick the entity type that you want to create, and the list of keywords will be updated based on that. And another way to, if you wanted to kind of, again, deal with the dual pane view itself, you can switch seamlessly between the single pane and dual pane views by clicking on this button. Okay, then we have a couple of options here that I'd run through. One is the number of copies. So this is for supporting a bulk creation of entities where if you want to create it and then edit and do the assignment later on, you can just set that number to the required number of copies, and then all the entities that you're going to create will be based on that particular. It'll be in that numbers multiplied by that number. Then another option is, for example, if you wanted to stay in the dialog and create all the required entities and then do the assignment later on, you can use this option to not close the dialog when you're creating the entities. For example, once I have turned that off, I can create my required properties. Either I can double click on the entity or on the keyword, then define the required attributes, and then I can create any other entity type that I want to create. So basically done with the creation of all the required entities. Otherwise, you can turn it off. Turn it on back to close the entity dialog upon creation. Onto the graphics, like I said earlier, Shift-C can be used as a shortcut to invoke the dialog, and that's not only from the browser. Even if you are working with the graphics, you can just click Shift-C anytime to bring the dialog and create the entity. And this is going to be dependent on what the idle selector is set to. So if it is set to materials, and Shift-C will bring its respective list of keywords. But if it's set to all, that's when you're going to get the dual pane to decide, to basically pick from the entity types as well. And by default, we have kept the current behavior or the behavior that you have in the previous version, that right click from the graphics, would continue to create the entities like how it was before. So basically, always going to a default card image without pasting the list. Same with the ribbons as well. Ribbon click create would continue creating the entities directly. But we have added this as a preference option. By default, we have kept it off for now, but it can be turned on in future, or currently if users want, they can turn it on, and it will start working like how you would do that from the browsers or the direct create dialog. So both from the ribbons and from the create context menu in the graphics, you will start getting the dialog.
Create entities dialog was one of the major feature that went into 25.1, and along with that, we were able to sneak in a few minor enhancements into the release. So I'll be walking us through that now. So first up is the entity display in the attribute columns. So this is related to the data display type. So for example, if you have a entity selector type of field here, in the picture you can see the material field I've shown. So when it is added as a browser column, it used to show only the IDs for reference. So now we have added a preference option that will allow users to not only display this data by ID, but also by name, and by both ID and name as well. So whenever you might want to add an entity selector as a column, you might feel free to use this option depending on how you want to review the added column as. So that's about this. Now moving on, it's about the expand collapse button. This button is added in all the hierarchical views in the product. And this is pretty much going to function in the same way that the context menus used to function, both from the empty space and at the folder levels. I'll be going to all these feature demos in a little bit in the product itself. But before that, another feature that we introduced with section cuts was that previously in the product, whenever we created a section cut, it used to get organized under this folder called ungrouped, which was under cross-section entity. So that's been renamed to a folder called section cuts. And now we have also added this create option here, which would be taking you back to the section cut tool so that the user can create it. And I'll show you a demo of all the three that we saw. So first up is the display type of the entity selector columns. Here I have, for example, opened the load step browser, and I've added this as my column already. And you can see that it is displaying me just the ID of the entity that's already been set. Now, if I want to change the type in which it's being displayed, say I want to see the name of the entity that was given as an input in the entity selector field, I could use that option. Or if I want to display it by both ID and name, I can also do that by using this option. So this degree of freedom is now open to the users. Okay, next up was the expand and the collapse button. So in the model browser, this is how it's going to look. This is the expand button. And when nothing is selected in the browser, this is pretty much going to do what the expand all context menu did. So it's going to expand and show me and display me the data like this. And the collapse is going to collapse. Now, if I have any folder selected and then I do an expand, it's going to act only specific to that folder level. Okay, now for some reason, if I had my entity shown, at that time also the same is going to work and give me the view of all the data that is nested at every level here, and the collapse is going to collapse the same. Okay. And the last thing that we saw was the section cuts. So for example, I create a section cut here. You could see that now it has got a dedicated folder called section cut that's added. And a create context menu, as I said, was also attached. So using this is also going to take me or point me to the section cut tool in the product. So those were the features. And up next, we also like to bring to your attention about some of the issues that were resolved with this release. So here, first is that the free nodes that were created in the session weren't accurately captured in the model browser. As you can see here, there were around 5 nodes that were created, and the browser wasn't capturing the detail exactly. So that's been fixed with this release. So the browser is now giving the correct count of the free nodes that are created in the session. Okay. The next issue that we're looking here is about the deletion of a empty parent include using the empty tool. So the point here was when a parent include entity had empty includes under it, and if we deleted parent include, it was consequently deleting any empty include under it, which wasn't the right behavior. So that was that is corrected, and in the 25.1, it only deletes the selected include, and whatever empty include file was present under the parent include gets updated as the parent and stays in the model. Okay. So this issue was the other issue that we see here was revolving around a long time, where the solver keyword list in the create menu, especially in solver entity views, were going off when we do a new session or when a new model was loaded or when the entity views were invoked from ribbons. So you can see here that I was in material view, and just when I hit or when I pressed a new session, I lost all the context menu that was listing me the solver keywords. So this was corrected thanks to create dialog that made this flow consistent. So now even after I hit a new session or load a new model, or I come from the ribbons into my views, the flow is consistent enough to list me the solver keywords. So this issue was seen in all solver entity views, and the same is now not seen. Okay, here this issue was with a preference option. So currently in the product, we have a preference option that stops us from invoking the browsers when I double click on graphics. So that wasn't working properly, and the same has been resolved. So the preference option is now being obeyed. So if that option is turned off, my browsers aren't invoked when I select an or when I double click an entity in the graphics. So it's just that the entity editor is populated and the data is shown. This was one of the issue that came up with GM also. So that's been corrected now. Okay, those were the catching issues. Now, the other issues are listed here. First, previously, when we entered a negative value in the ID field, it was converting it into a random number. So that's been corrected. Then there was a case in LS Dyna for rigid wall entity where for certain selector columns, the data wasn't updated properly when it was added as a column in the browser. So that issue is also handled now. Then there was a case with FICO interface also where the model browser wasn't restored when the session was relaunched. So that is also corrected. And now we also have plot load option for the load add card for the load collector entity in its entity view for the OptiStruct interface. So that's there now. And then for optimization and design explorer browsers, there was an issue previously where the double click on the entity in that browser wasn't invoking the entity editor. So that issue is now resolved, and the entity editor works fine and comes up fine when you are double clicking an entity to invoke the entity editor in the case where it's closed. So last up is that previously we had two different dialogues that showed up when we deleted a part set, and both of them were different when it came from model browser and from part browser. So this difference was addressed, and now we have a similar dialog coming up when you delete a part set, either from a model browser or from a part browser. So that's pretty much about 25.1.